a former assistant U.S. attorney. Kim, thank you so much for being with us. So we're getting some color from other news outlets, for example, the Wall Street Journal reporting that 20 boxes were taken here. Just explain to us what sort of detail, what sort of information we expect to get as and when the search warrant is unsealed.
Well, it looks like there'll be two main pieces of information. One is the return that will outline in some detail what was actually taken by the FBI, and that was left with Donald Trump's attorney, the same document. And the Wall Street Journal has reported that there are the highest security level boxes that were included, the top secret, and then lower classified information. So as Jessica Schneider indicated, that high level is the kind of thing that's kept in very, very secure facilities. Only a certain number of people are allowed to even see it. And so the fact that that was in Mar-a-Lago without that kind of security clearance for anyone, including Donald Trump, he no longer has that security clearance in this moment. The other thing that we will reportedly find out based on these other news outlets, confirmed potentially through the DOJ and the court, is a list of the legal criminal statutes that could have been the source or the basis for the search here, and things ranging from espionage to destruction or concealment of documents, those criminal statutes that are separate from the Presidential Records Act. The Presidential Records Act just says you got to turn everything over before you turn the keys to the White House over, every president. But these criminal statutes apply to everyone, and it's essentially says you can't be destroying, concealing, taking away these various federal records that belong to the people, not to any one person.
And part of the sort of goal here of the FBI, just in terms of the search warrant, is to establish intent that Trump perhaps willingly took these documents and shipped them to Mar-a-Lago, knowing that that wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. Just explain to us, why might a former president want to ship 20 boxes of documents from the White House to his private residence, including 11 sets of classified documents? I'm asking you to enter into the former president's mind here. Just walk us through that.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so the search warrant itself is just to actually go in and get what appears to be probable cause that there is evidence of a crime on the premises, and it has to be fresh. So in the last few weeks, the FBI got information to justify a judge assigning a warrant. The intent element that you point out is really important for proving any of these potential crimes. And it looks like already the former president is saying, I declassified things. To be able to sort of in your mind or on your own with a swoop of a pen declassify things, I think that is not borne out in the law, because there has to be a clear record of what documents are and are not classified, because if it's done kind of in a willy-nilly way, they're not protected anymore. That's one of his arguments. Another could be it was done by mistake. But we know that the subpoena went out early this year. So, and the first 15 boxes of documents did come back. There was some bad faith there, right? So for whatever reason, 10 or 11 boxes, despite the FBI's issuing a subpoena, working with Donald Trump's lawyers, didn't make it back, and that included, classified information. So I think it's going to be a very difficult challenge for Trump's lawyers, if this actually ends up with an indictment, to argue that he did not have knowledge, the requisite knowledge and intent. But as you indicate, Zane, that's the hardest part and the trickiest part in criminal prosecutions, for good reason, because a criminal prosecution, unlike a civil prosecution, can actually take someone's liberty away, put them in jail. So Donald Trump, as he did with, you mentioned in the New York State civil deposition, invoked the Fifth Amendment. Donald Trump is a regular citizen right now, and he's entitled to all the protections of the Constitution that are afforded to people that are ensnared in the criminal justice system that aren't former presidents.
At what point will we learn whether a search warrant was indeed actually justified? I mean, Merrick Garland said that this is not something the Justice Department would ever do or ever sort of do lightly, as it were. When will we learn whether this was really justified?
Well, as somebody who's sort of practiced law, been in the Justice Department previously. I'm a law professor for 16 years. You know, I'm confident it was justified unless it's disproved, because again, a federal judge had to be persuaded that there was probable cause. The Fourth Amendment protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures. That's the difference between America and England under King George III, where he could just roam around. So, I think that the bigger question, I mean, presumably we'll see the warrant today, et cetera. But I really think the focus right now is on how much damage was done to our national security by these very top secret documents getting out of the secure facilities that every other president to date has respected. Who else saw them? Did they get into the hands of our enemies? I think that is really the urgent concern, less so whether the warrant was justified, because there were so many levels, both inside the Justice Department. FBI Director Christopher Wray, appointed by Donald Trump, signed off. Merrick Garland signed off. A federal judge signed off. And they all knew it would be subject to real public scrutiny. And honestly, to get to your legal question, if this ever went to trial, Donald Trump could challenge that legally, and then a later federal judge, and even potentially appellate court judge, maybe even the Supreme Court, will be able to double check the record of what DOJ and the lower judge did here. So I'm not really so worried that process was done in an illegal way in this moment.
Right, because the FBI, as you point out, would have to have probable cause. Just quickly, because I've got about 20 seconds left. Will we get this document within the next hour or so, now that the 3 p.m. deadline has passed?
Well, yes, because under the court's order, or the request, I should say, by DOJ, that the court said by 3 o'clock, DOJ had to let the court know what Donald Trump's position was. And Donald Trump reportedly has not filed an opposition. So in that instance, the judge, unless the judge really wants to intervene here in a major way, will probably defer to DOJ and Donald Trump's consent by not having opposed it. So I think we will see the official document probably by the end of business today, if not first thing on Monday.
I see. So not necessarily within the next hour, but you think by in the next couple of hours, if not by Monday morning. Okay, I'm just looking at the clock.
Yeah, it's impossible to know. I think
yeah.
The judge is very aware that American people want to see what's going on here. So
yes.
It makes sense to really stay tuned.
All right, Kim Whaley, thank you so much.